NAFI would like to thank Sporties and ForeFlight for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of the More Right Rudder podcast. CFIs, is it time to renew your certificate? Sporty's eFERC makes it simple, and it's completely free. With 16 detailed lessons on FAA updates, safety, and cockpit technology, it keeps your skills sharp and your certificate current. Access the course anytime on any device. You can add paperless renewal for just $49.95 to let us handle your IACRA application. Plus, enjoy bonus access to Sporty's full suite of pilot training courses and teaching tools. Visit sporties.com/FERC to get started today.
Welcome to the More Right Rudder podcast. I'm Beth Stanton, NAFI's Director of Publications and Editor. This is More to the Story, a series that glimpses behind the scenes of some recent articles published in Mentor magazine. This episode, we actually have two articles to dive into. In the May-June issue of Mentor, Adam and Kim Magee wrote articles about balloons. Adam Magee is a commercial hot air balloon pilot, flight instructor, designated pilot examiner, and FAA safety team rep. He was the 2021 National Fast Team Representative of the Year and the 2024 Certificated Flight Instructor of the Year. Adam is also on the NAFI board, and he is our treasurer. Kim Magee is a commercial lighter-than-air pilot and private airplane pilot. She is a certified repair woman, owner of a Part 145 repair station, and is also an FAA safety team rep. Kim holds 6 world and 9 U.S. national ballooning records. Adam and Kim are the dynamic duo co-founders of the Balloon Training Academy. Now, in the May-June edition of Mentor, Adam authored "There's a Balloon in the Pattern, What Do We Do?" And Kim wrote "From Ripstop to Runways, Adapting Flight Instruction from Hot Air Balloons." Adam and Kim, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Beth.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
It's so exciting to have the both of you here together. Now, I want to start with Adam. Adam wrote this article. So here, this is the edition of Mentor magazine that Adam and Kim were featured in. Adam, his was on the cover here. He was like, "Hey Beth, I have an article that I wrote, and you threw it my way." Actually, Adam, you were also, I believe, the cover. I think it was in 2023. Was it January of 2023? Look at him. He's cover boy.
Yeah, yeah.
I just remembered that because I remember we had a balloon on the cover for
Yeah.
that one too. So you had already written this story and you sent it to me. Now, in this article, you talk about how students get information. They first memorize it, then they learn it, then they apply it, and then they make connections. And this article was ostensibly a scenario for correlation level learning. So it wasn't necessarily like, okay, we're in a balloon and we're doing this thing. So I'm curious, you start out the article where you're like, the students in the pattern doing their, pattern work with their instructors. And then all of a sudden a balloon shows up. So were you that balloon who showed up and sort of like barged in on this pattern work that was happening?
Yeah, I was pretty much. Yeah, we in Eastern Iowa we have a pretty good general aviation community, and we have the flight school out there in Marion, Iowa, and shout out to NAFI member Cole Norton who owns PNN Flight and Charter out there, but he operates the flight school out there, and he's actually a balloon pilot as well. Kim trained him towards his balloon rating, and they traded training, so that's kind of how Kim got her private airplane rating. So, we have a pretty strong general aviation community, and we fly in that area a lot, and we kind of bring a unique perspective every time we fly in that area of having to deal with a balloon that's coming in for a landing at the airport, or sometimes we take off there. So, just kind of a situation that doesn't really happen often. And on that particular morning, the students were training, and they came out and were like, I've never had this happen before. I don't know if it'll ever happen again, but it was really cool, and appreciated the opportunity to kind of bring the material to life and live it firsthand. So thought it was kind of unique and thought it'd be worthwhile to share to the NAFI community.
I love that. So you were obviously you don't see too many balloons at most airports, right? So that is kind of a unique situation. Obviously, at your airport, probably not so unique because you guys are there. Um,
Yeah.
but so this scenario happened. They came to you and were like, "Whoa!" And so you're like, "This is a teachable moment." I love that you did that. So. Did you put yourself in their shoes or did you kind of tell us a little bit about your thought process? Because when you wrote this article, you talked a little bit about like this is what you guys might not know and you should know. So is that sort of the
Yeah.
approach that you took? You want to educate people to know a little bit more about how balloons operate?
Yeah, so locally, when we have a balloon student, we try to teach kind of the opposite. We're flying in airspace with airplanes and helicopters and everything else. So, we'll kind of teach, well, this is a perspective you should have as a balloonist about the other aircraft in general aviation. So, wanted to kind of flip it and think about it from the other side of, if I'm not a balloon pilot, what should I know about ballooning that would help me, stay safe and what could instructors be teaching, the airplane or helicopter or other pilots to keep everyone safe and as a DP as well, I always like to get to the correlation level of learning. So, and I think, that's really kind of the same across all of aviation is you try to get to that correlation level and trying to connect topics as best you can. And that usually has no barriers between what aircraft you're flying. So, just trying to share knowledge and, kind of get there as a community.
Well, what's really interesting, you talk about the correlation level because here's the thing. When everybody is getting in, Kim, you can speak to this, when you're getting your fixed wing pilot, you have to memorize, who has the right of way and all this kind of stuff. And again, it's one thing to memorize it and know it, but then it's another thing to be like, oh crap, there's a balloon in the pattern. What do we do?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Uh,
really because you're not expecting to see that. It is kind of unusual. I also think it's similar to private pilots have to memorize PARE, for spin recovery, but you don't actually practice it, right? You have to memorize the
yeah.
4 steps, but not practice it. So, again, talk about correlation level. If all you've ever done is just memorize something, you don't have any muscle memory, you don't have any experience with it. So I think that's such an important part of passing the information to each other.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think when I was researching this article, there's only about 5,000 plus balloon pilots in the United States. It's a relatively tiny niche. So tell us a little bit about what do the balloon pilots think of these power pilots? Again, Kim, you have like that perspective of both. So maybe this would be a good sort of shift. You were a balloonist for 12 years before you got your airplane. So tell us a little bit about what that was like to make that leap in that direction.
Yeah, I think there's generally balloonists fly in areas not around airports to avoid all of the other general aviation traffic. And that's one thing we get to experience here that I think has really benefited both my ballooning and my airplane flying, getting to meld those two thoughts of flight and how different they are and kind of again correlate those different aspects into to make me a better pilot on both sides. So generally, yeah, there's ballooning is a very small community, and they tend not to mix with powered flight because it's just such a different form of aviation, and we tend to fly in big open areas away from densely populated areas, away from busy airports. we don't have transponders, we have no electrical system, so we can't fly into even like a Class C airspace. So we so underneath shelves of airspaces, or we fly, out in the Class GE airspace. So it's been really nice to have, that shift of combining both of those forms of aviation together, and get the perspective of both. It's really helped me learn a lot as a balloonist. We're, talking about memorizing things. We just memorize airspaces for the most part. We don't play in a lot of the different airspaces, and we mainly live in the Class G, Class E. Um, Maybe if you're an exciting balloon pilot, you go into Class D a little bit. It's not like you're going into these Class Cs, these Class B airspaces. And so getting to see why those airspaces are the way they are from an airplane perspective helped me apply that to ballooning and then go teach my students that. So, if you understand the why, you can understand the what better. It's easier to understand how things work if you understand why they were built that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of, I was going to mention, it's kind of interesting, talking to other DPs and other, aircraft, like talking to Karen, the NAFI chair, about, her being a DP and everything. And it's kind of interesting, a balloonist showing up for a check ride. Weak areas are usually going to be airspace and radio communications. Well, that's an airplane's, strongest. Then you think about like an airplane, and a lot of their, weak points are weather. But that's a really strong point for a balloonist, because balloonists have to know such micro scale meteorology and all that to fly. So it's always just kind of interesting to see kind of the two sides mix and kind of learning off of each other.
So Kim, you must be like super pilot because like you know it all now. You
Yeah.
have like the
I
weather, you
don't
have the
She
airspace.
teaches me often.
I think it's helped to get a different perspective. There are still a lot of things I need to learn and brush my skills up on. That's the joy of aviation. There's always something new you can do and more things you can learn and people you can learn from.
Well, and that's why I was just so grateful and so excited that you guys both wrote these articles and that we're able to put them in Mentor. If you will recall the issue before this, the March, April issue, we featured some gliders. So, we had a whole bunch of like coming out from the glider perspective. Now, I think I think it's like 20 something. I didn't memorize that number off the top of my head, but significantly more glider pilots than balloonists, not as many as power pilots, of course. But what I find so fascinating is we can learn so much, and you don't even have to become get a certificate or get a license. Like, just I went for a hot air balloon lesson and I'm like, oh my God, like all of these things, just one lesson was like blew my mind open. Same thing with gliders. So I just think there's so much value in just putting yourself in a different type of aircraft. It gives you this whole new perspective. Like, I think I wrote like in theory, I know that like you just go where the wind takes you, but in practice, it's a little bit different. You're like, whoa, wait a second, I have no control over where we're gonna go. So it's putting that in practice, not just theory, gives you such a respect. Also, shit, that stuff is heavy.
Yeah.
It's heavy. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my
it's
God, it's like this is like a lot of work. You have to be committed to this.
very heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be committed to ballooning, because it's early mornings, it's a lot of work. You got to have friends, to help you.
I
So
know.
Yeah, like you can just decide on a Saturday morning you want to go fly and just go by yourself.
yeah,
You have to have at least one other person who's willing to go with you and drive the chase vehicle and come pick you up, usually.
unless you're Ubering it. So
I guess, yeah, unless you're leaving your aircraft in a field while you Uber back to get to your car, which
Which that's never happened to you guys ever, has it?
we have not done that. We always, I mean, I guess luckily both being pilots, we understand the need to get up and go fly and do things. So we take turns and somebody gets to fly, somebody gets to drive. But
my younger days, my teenage years, I did the bike once. I flew with a bike, landed, biked back, and then got the vehicle. So
Wow.
yeah,
And
you don't.
again, that's something that probably power pilots don't consider. like,
Yeah.
oh, now I'm here. It's not like I can fly back where I started.
Yeah.
Um, Kim, in your article, you touched on this already a little bit. You talked about the weather, and you guys mentioned this, the micro meteorology and the obstacles in the landing. So you touched on those in your article. Tell us a little bit more, like what are like why were those the things you picked to write about? Like when you sat down to write this article and you wanted to convey these thoughts, why did those ones bubble up to the top to be like, yeah, these are what I need to talk about?
Yeah, these were things that I noticed that I took from my balloon experience into my airplane training. So when we were doing emergency landings in an airplane, I knew, okay, well, what is the safest place for me to land off of an airport? I know what the fields are like because I've experienced those in a ballooning. We've had extensive talks of, cornfields are really rough. Bean fields are nice and soft. Those are things that are going to keep you safe and cause less harm to you and less harm to the aircraft. Hay fields are even better. Things like that that are just those little nuances that you would never think of if you're just taking off from an airport. Every time we live in Iowa, so we're surrounded by a lot of fields. And the closest fields to the airport, if you're trying to make an emergency landing to the airport at that time, were all cornfields. So I was like, well, actually, I would probably just extend my my glide a little bit here if I can and go to another field past to this bean field because I think I'm going to have a safer outcome and I'll be able to walk away from that more likely than I would if I was in a cornfield. Little things like that that I just you could see, the instructor I was with who's like, "Oh, well that's not something I've ever considered of, when I get down to that level, what does it make a difference where I land and what I'm going for, and things like that. So, little things like that that I think are, from a balloonist perspective, you consider. And the weather, when you listen to a weather report, all you ever get is the surface level winds. When you're listening in, from the airport reporting or when you call, for a weather briefing, they're going to give you surface level winds or maybe the 369 winds. And then, but what happens is you take off from the airport and those winds right at treetop level are going to affect your climb out. So you're still, in a very, on takeoffs and landing is your most precarious place to fly an aircraft. That's where the most accidents happen, on takeoff and in landing. So being aware that there could be a wind shear even at 100 feet and how that affects your takeoff, or especially how it affects your landing. If you have a wind shear and you're coming in and all of a sudden you lose lift at 100 feet, being prepared for that. And that's something as a balloonist we look at all the time because our balloon is 85 to 90 feet tall. So those winds at 100 feet are really what we're landing in. And that's how we would think about that. So even though it's 5 knots on the surface, if it's 15, at a crosswind at the trees, you're going to be landing much different than what you would expect at the surface. So taking that and knowing how to correct your controls in an airplane for that helped make smoother landings as well.
Yeah, and I think one thing that from a balloonist perspective too, like this weather and how, ballooning has to have such great weather, pretty fragile to, our weather scenarios. And so even something like a wind shear, it might not be a technical wind shear as far as, meteorology, classification, but it's enough of a difference in speed or direction that it can have definitely have an impact on a balloon, but it can have an impact still on an airplane and make that takeoff or landing a little more difficult to, have a little more risk to it that, the pilot might not be aware of. So it's kind of getting that kind of calibration of what's happening, to the aircraft and kind of picking that up before you might be thinking about it.
That was a revelation to me. I had never considered that when you talked about the 85-foot high. And I'm like, oh, right. Yeah. Like, oh, airplanes aren't that, they're only like,
Yeah,
they're
they're
not like,
pretty short.
Yeah.
like, oh, wow. So what is the max wind situation for balloons? That's why I know that's why you have to fly early in the morning. So when does it get too spicy?
Yeah, I think most balloonists cap it at about 10 miles an hour. Most balloonists are talking miles an hour, so that's probably about 8.5 knots at the most for a surface wind speed. And it does depend. You could have that perfect surface wind speed of 5 knots, and then that 100-foot wind right at the treetop is 15 to 20 knots. So we like to call that our Midwest low level jet here. We get that a lot. It's very common, and sometimes if it's that low, then that means we're going to be landing at that speed and that's too windy. But yeah, balloonists have a very low tolerance for wind. And especially we fly early in the morning and late at night to avoid thermals. So we do the opposite of what gliders do. They love all those thermals and it helps them out a lot. Once we're in a thermal, that our only sense of control is up and down, and being in a thermal takes away that control. And so we avoid those as much as we can. So that's first thing in the morning. So in the summer, we're up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and then in the few hours before sunset, usually 3 hours before sunset, is when we'll start getting ready for ballooning activities.
Something that you just said now too, it sort of hit home on a different level. The only thing we control is up and down. Like again, like recognizing that part of it. And you're just this way it's going to go wherever the wind's going to take you. Wow, you're
Yeah, and
kind
I
of
think
in my
that's,
brain a little bit here.
that's kind of our I think probably both each of our favorite thing about ballooning is that, just that you can't really control it. But when you have the opportunities when, the forecast might line up perfectly and the weather holds and you can fly, proficiently that flight exactly as you planned it and take off and land kind of exactly where you planned. I think, that's kind of the most exciting thing about ballooning is being able to get something that's uncontrollable and kind of control it and plan your flight and execute that. I think that's really what makes ballooning fun. And that's probably what I enjoy the most out of it is yeah, just being able to navigate the winds, something that's unpredictable and get it to where I want to go.
Well,
I
there's
like the quietness. I think
Yeah,
we
I
have a
don't
friend.
to be said for that precision, right?
yeah.
Like what you just described, Adam, is precision. It's like which is in your realm of ballooning probably doesn't happen that often. Like the plan doesn't go to plan like super often because there's so many variables that are out of your control.
Yeah,
Um,
we usually have like 30 different plans.
Yeah,
We
I
have
think I think it happens more often than people expect it to. People always seem to be surprised by the fact that we tell them our balloon competitions are accuracy competitions. So it's how well can you navigate to a spot, and at the national and world level, you're starting a mile, 3 miles, 5 miles away and navigating to a fabric X in the middle of a field, and you're dropping a little beanbag on it. And people are fighting for inches at that level. So it is very accurate. And we do it with GPSs now too. So you fly to imaginary points in the sky or you make shapes in the sky and you're judged on how well you can do that. So it is very, it is, it is tougher, I will say, than flying an airplane to a specific, it is much tougher, but it is more steerable than people think it is.
okay, so we veered into the contest thing. Now I'm like, I don't know exactly what I was thinking these balloon contests were. Like I literally did not know, but you're describing like a flower bomb contest, like hitting.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So like the pumpkin drops are things that people have at airports. Yeah, we do that at a slower speed generally, but for much longer and more targets.
Okay, so there's that. But then you said just go to a point in the sky with that's
Yeah.
kind of breaking my brain too. So like again,
Yep.
you're in all these dimensions,
Yes.
So I'm thinking like, the spot landing contest, it's like you're just coming in and it's like you're in two dimensions because you're like boom,
Yep.
boom. That's only two dimensions. Like you're hovering like
It's that, but you pick an altitude as well. Yeah.
Mm.
And you have to usually pick that from at least a mile away. So it's not like you can say coming in on final approach that I'm going to land at this spot. It's I'm a mile away and I think I am going to be at 500 feet at these coordinates, and you have to navigate to that.
Sometimes you got to do it
And
before you take off, or
yeah.
So
Sometimes you have to do it before you take off. Yeah, there's a lot of that's why we say balloonists are very good meteorologists on a micro scale meteorology, because we know weather within that, you know,
10 mile.
yeah, 10-mile radius, every 50 feet all the way up to 10,000 feet usually. We
Where do
know
you
what
get
the
that
weather, what the
information?
wind speed and the direction.
You look at different forecast models for that? Because I mean, I don't think normally it's that precise. Like if you look at like the winds aloft aren't usually within that granular level. So where do you guys get your wind?
Yeah, there's different forecast models that we look at, and then before a flight, you send up what we call as a pieball, and it's a helium balloon that you either watch with a compass and you can see what it does, and you can look at it for generally maybe 2,000 feet before it becomes too small to see, or now they have um, little GPS trackers that they can attach to these balloons, and you send them up and it sends the data back down to you, and you can read that before you take off. And then
Even drones now.
yeah, and drones have been useful in reading wind data for us up to 400 feet.
Yeah, drone up, it collects the data, comes back, and
Mhm.
yeah.
And then once you take off, we have GPSs that we carry with us that will track the speeds and keep a log of that, of direction, wind speed at different altitudes.
You guys are breaking my brain here. I'm like,
Yeah.
do other people know these things? Or is it just like a secret knowledge that
You
balloonists
know,
have? Like I'm so happy
a
you're
lot
telling
of
me this. I mean, am I just like living under a rock and didn't know all this stuff? That is amazing.
weather people become balloon pilots
Yeah,
too.
they
There's
do.
there's quite a few that are
Right. Would make
yeah,
sense, right? Wow.
yeah.
Because the two skill sets, you're talking when you were talking about like the balloon community and how it's a small community and it's like it's reminding me it's like people that are like I want to be away from other things. I want it to be quiet. I want it to be, you know what I mean? It's like probably a certain people, a certain personality type or certain skill set is sort
It's
of
probably more outgoing people, actually, because you're in this gigantic, colorful thing. There's no place to hide. You're not going very fast. You tend to draw a crowd. So I think a lot of people tend to actually be very outgoing as balloonists, because no matter where you go, every time you land or take off, it seems like somebody is coming up to you and talking to you about your aircraft, and just excited that you're there and wanting to see more. And so you kind of get to show off, your balloon a little bit every time you get to go fly.
I was gonna say if you land in a neighborhood, but when you land in a
Yeah.
neighborhood, you're guaranteed to make Facebook and Instagram and all of those things. So yeah, you kind of have to be ready for that.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm just this is so fascinating talking to you guys. I'm like so excited. When I first, coming from the world of competition aerobatics, it's like hard charging type A, like, loud planes that go fast and then when I met glider people, they're like, everything's slower and they're all engineers and they have like geometry. So I thought it was so fascinating. And there again, everything happens in slow motion. Like it was just so interesting to see. And of course, you go to Oshkosh and you see the warbird folks and you see the seaplane folks. Every aviation niche has its like the people who gravitate towards it. But having to be able to have that sort of level of granular detail and being able to, I mean, so you do the competitions, Kim. Adam, have you ever done any of these contests at all or
Yeah, so yeah, we've both flown internationally at like Junior World and Women's World Championships. So yeah.
so you both have experience doing that, but that is so fascinating, the whole competition aspect of it and just doing that. It just it again, flying competition aerobatics, it just makes you better. It just makes you more precise. Putting
Mhm.
your skills up against other people, you're just like really focused on that.
I was gonna say we bring a lot of that kind of competition to our training and kind of make it, game based and scenario based, with our flight training that we give because we see a lot of value in kind of that precision flying and trying to be accurate and getting to where you want to go.
Exactly, it's a goal. So it's like when you gamify it and you have a goal, it's like, okay, this is going to be fun. Let's do this. So it makes it more fun. So I want to ask you guys about the Balloon Training Academy. So tell us a little bit about what the Balloon Training Academy is and why you decided to co-found it.
Want to take it or me?
Uh, the Balloon Training Academy is our nonprofit that we started to try to get more people involved in ballooning. I mean, as you mentioned, ballooning is a very small community. As with a lot of aviation, it's kind of there's a graying of the sport. Adam and I are lucky that we both grew up in the sport.
So I'm
And
I'm graying quickly.
we both grew up in the sport and noticed, the lack of people our age. And as we got older and got our license, then we noticed, there was nobody our age. There's, no younger people. I would say even now, I think we're still considered some of the younger people. So there was no, because of how sparse the community is, we're spread out all over the country and there's so few of us, it's hard to get training. Our commercial certificate is flight instructor privileges. And so a lot of these pilots have had these privileges for years, but have never trained a student or haven't trained a student in, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And so they didn't know where to start. And Adam and I have both, have a love of both ballooning and teaching. We both did a lot of teaching when we were in college and kind of transferred those skills to improve our flight instructing and then help improve other people and their flight instructing as well. So that's where it started.
Yeah, and since balloon community is so small, there's not, other providers out there like, you can't go to King's School and learn how to fly a balloon. There's not those kind of providers in ballooning. So, yeah, 10 years ago, we kind of saw that opportunity to really have knowledge share out there. And so, yeah, we have private and commercial ground school, flight instructor refresher courses online, a whole bunch of continuing education courses.
A loss of power for
loss of power.
to explain some of the nuances of
Yeah.
powered pilots who want to now go to an unpowered system, some of the
Since you get to
things
you get to skip the knowledge exam if you wanted to add on a ratings, but we felt that there was some knowledge that still need to be shared, so we have a course for that as well. But yeah, so I think just trying to provide an avenue for this knowledge share and get it out there. We also have private and commercial syllabus out there. And we, I guess, just recently published the Advanced Balloon Flying Handbook as well. So trying to go beyond kind of the minimum standards and the minimum knowledge and really advance it and make it keep raising the bar and keep improving and pushing it forward.
Well, and I love that, everybody says a, good pilot is always learning. And how do we learn? We have to have people teach us. We have to be provided with the information and in ways that is accessible to us. And so I love that you guys saw a need for this material and you stepped in and you provided it. So thank you for doing that. And the fact that you are able to not only make more balloon pilots, but safer balloon pilots by having the quality of education there that wasn't there before. So that's so awesome that you guys did that. As we wrap up here, I want to ask both of you guys the same question. If there is one thing that you want power pilots to know about balloons, the number one thing, what would it be?
Can I have two things?
Yes.
What's your
Well, I was going to say, for those who are not going to be in a balloon, but be around balloons, I think the one thing people, um, if you're sharing airspace with a balloon, remember that balloons are moving. Even though we're moving very slowly, we are moving. And I think people tend to forget that and have kind of get their itis, or they want to cut in front of a balloon in a pattern, or if we're out flying, they want to fly circles around us because we're cool, we're fun to look at. But when you go to make that second circle, we've already moved to the mark for that turns around a point. So things to think about, that we are constantly moving. We don't have brakes. We can't go backwards. But I think that's the most common thing that stresses out a balloon pilot from a powered perspective. But the other thing, I think, if you're training in balloons, which I would love to see more people train in balloons, the big difference in flying a balloon and flying an airplane is there's a delay. When I throttle up in an airplane, I'm going. I have that power instantly. When I add heat in a balloon, when I turn on the burners to add heat, it's a 5 second delay. There is a delay in response of the aircraft. You have to have time for that heat to reach the top of the envelope and then to expand and create that lift. So there's always this delay in response of the aircraft, which does mean that there is a point of no return, and that balloons will just keep on their path, even if you're trying to add as much power as possible. At some point, you might be too far behind the aircraft. So balloons, you have to be constantly ahead of the aircraft, on top of it, being aware of your surroundings, your altimeter, looking at those things to make sure you're not behind the aircraft, because sometimes you don't have the option to just go around. There is a point that it won't help.
When you're telling me that, I'm thinking of in The Wizard of Oz at the end where he just starts floating away. But it's true, just the air, it's going to take you up and away. That's just where it's going to go, and it's out of your control to just you have up and down. So thank you so much for sharing those things. That was really fascinating, and again, I'm so grateful to have you guys here because it's just you're sharing things that I'm sure most or a lot of power pilots do not know, and you're giving us a lot of things to think about. So thank you so much. What's your number one? Did she already like say one of them?
Did you find?
Yeah, I'll go. So I'll piggyback off of kind of both her answers, but also the article. So I'd say one thing I didn't mention in the article is, it's important for airplane pilots or to follow kind of the procedures or what's written in the ACs as far as how an airplane should be flying in a non-towered airport, because that's one thing that balloons fly with the wind. So if an airplane's coming into land, that airplane and balloon should be flying towards each other. So balloonist isn't going to be looking behind them for an airplane coming into land in an airport. That should be out in front. So that's kind of the thing of where both pilots should be able to see the situation unfolding in front of them, and nobody should be kind of looking behind each other. So, which is also on those calm days, it's never actually really calm. That balloon's always going to be moving a direction. So, just kind of be mindful of that. And then to piggyback on your other point, which yeah, as a DP for balloons, you see a lot of add-on ratings, and so I think that flying finesse is different, and kind of that feel of ballooning is one of the points you see a lot on practical exams and stuff. But I would encourage any airplane or any other powered pilot to consider the add-on rating for balloon. It's not terribly difficult as far as hours go. It only requires 20 hours in balloons, so that's could knock on wood not be too difficult.
If weather cooperates.
If weather depending on where you're at. If you're in Alaska, probably very hard. Sometimes in Iowa hard, but yeah, we definitely need more pilots and need more balloonists out there. So yeah, definitely a great opportunity to expand knowledge and learn something new.
Awesome. Well, thank you for putting that plug in there in the end. Come on, everybody. If if you've ever wanted to figure out what it's like, it just, you know what, just go try it. Just even, even if you don't get a balloon rating, everybody who's listening right now, just go out and give it a try. See what it's like to just to float around like that in the quiet. It's pretty spectacular. And who knows, maybe you'll fall in love with it and want to make it a bigger part of your life. Listen,
Yeah,
you
we always say oh, sorry. We always say the first flight's the most expensive because you buy a balloon afterwards. So,
is
yeah,
it like that? Do people get hooked like that right away? Is that pretty much
yeah,
so
yeah.
that leads me to a question. I know you talk about like you fly your many balloons. How many balloons do you actually have?
I think we lost count.
think we have five right now.
I always laugh because it's sort of like when you have to think about how many cats you have too many cats. So like if you're like, how many
Definitely
balloons
have too
do we
many.
have?
I think that's what happens
Yeah.
when you both you enjoy a sport and then you get together. The sport just, becomes much, it's not you don't combine into one car if you really like cars, it just kind of you get lots of cars because you like cars if you're a car family. If we were ballooning before we met each other and then met each other and so we have lots of balloons now.
Like some people like bring like a couch and then like a dining room table. You guys just brought all your balloons into the relationship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, yeah, breakups might be messy. Yeah.
Do you have to have a giant, where do you keep them all?
Yeah, we have to build a garage for them. Yeah.
Yeah, we
It's,
started out with them in our garage and it got too big, especially with the repair station. We just now we have a shed that could fit an RV in it, but it is for our balloons.
I love it. You guys, this has just been such a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. It's like I want to keep you here another hour. There's like so much more. Maybe you'll have to come back again. Or I don't know, let's think about how we can continue this conversation literally and figuratively, because I think it is so valuable for NAFI members to understand the nuances, just have the information, safety for everybody. Like you're saying, like we're not looking behind us. You're like, yeah, well, duh. Yeah, if somebody's coming in and they're not in using the pattern the way they should, there could be some challenges there. So
Mhm.
I think there's so much value to us having this conversation. And thank you again, both. I don't know, Adam, if we're doing like a cover every couple of years, think about that coming up. Maybe Kim, you can dethrone him and you could do
Yeah.
that. But thank you both so much for contributing to Mentor Magazine, to NAFI Publications, for being here on the podcast. It's been a pleasure having you both.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having us.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth, for all your editing magic
You,
skills,
you guys,
delivering the
you
great
guys, you
magazine.
guys are pretty easy. It's all good. Well, thanks again for being here with us tonight, you guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
And so, everybody, thank you for joining us for more to the story. Be sure to leave your comments, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.